The 25th Hour Radio Show.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in today to the 25th Hour Radio Show here on Monster Radio, AM 1150. I am your host, Rob Fairless, and on the phone with me today is the editor of the Old Farmers Almanac, Janice Stillman. Janice, thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to join me on the show.
Oh, thank you, Rob. It's my pleasure.
You know, the first question I'm going to ask you right there, is it Almanac or is it Almanac?
Well, I think it's Almanac, but, you know, the important thing is the yellow cover, so you call it what you want.
I guess it all depends on where you're from in the United States, I guess.
That's true. Yes.
So, Janice, I'm going to stick to tradition here with this first question and get a little background information about you yourself. I see here on the Almanac website, you have a degree in English and a master's in mass communication. Just curious, what was it about those fields of study that sparked your interest to pursue them in college?
Well, I guess I've always been a wordsmith. I've always kind of been fascinated with the language, and growing up in the 60s and 70s, I watched all of the, you know, Leave It to Beaver, Mary Tyler Moore, and I just really loved the commercials and advertisements and programs, and I think I just was always interested in the whole idea of information and motivation and persuasion and fascination and entertainment. So it really started with the words, I think.
So to earn the title as the editor, you know, the first female editor, by the way, in the Old Farmers Almanac history, had to be a really rewarding moment in time for you. How did you end up getting that position? I mean, that's not something that's just advertised in the local newspaper, is it?
Well, there were some advertisements that were put out, and
Really?
I guess they did a big search, yes. And, you know, I was one of many, as I understand it, and was just lucky enough to be invited to come up and interview, and eventually got the position. But I can tell you a funny story, and that is that I'm the 13th editor of the Old Farmers Almanac. And Judd Hale, who has been with the title for over 50 years, said to me on the day before I was hired, he said, "Now, here's the thing. If you want, we can hire somebody for a couple of weeks, and they can be 13, and you can be 14 if you have any fear of the number 13. And I said, "No, I think I'm okay. I think it'll be good. It'll be a lucky number." And, you know, indeed it has been. You know, the other funny thing that actually somebody pointed out to me, somebody in your position actually as an interviewer, they said, you know, the Old Farmers Almanac was founded when George Washington was president, and of course he was the first president, and we've had 45 presidents, well 45 take the seat. There was 44 people actually, but nonetheless, the number is 45 today. And there's only been 13 editors of the Old Farmers Almanac in the same span of time. What does that tell you in terms of tenure? And, you know, some people have been here for decades and some only a couple or a few years, and you know, so far I'm here for 17 years or so, and I feel like I'm blessed to have the position.
Now, had you known beforehand you would be making history as the first female editor in the publication's history?
Yeah, I didn't really think about it, to be honest with you. You know, I mean, I just saw it as a great opportunity to become a piece of history and working with this publication. It was a challenge, of course. It was not... It's not a publication I was familiar with. I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in a suburb outside of Boston, and maybe you can even hear that in my voice. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we had a few pets, but like a lot of people, when I first picked up the Old Farmers Almanac, I looked at those columns of numbers and all the quirky stories and the astronomy pages and these tables from frost dates and planting by the moon. And I didn't understand a lot of it. And Judd Hale, the same fellow I mentioned a moment ago, said to me, he says, you should sit down and you should read every single issue of the Old Farmers Almanac so you can see how it developed. Now, I'm not recommending that your listeners do that, but it did help me. It did help me to get a handle on it. But, you know, it also occurred to me, and we did institute this, you'll notice that the pages, at the top of the pages on the left and right, you know, you have an indication of the category of information like nature or food or anniversary or astrology or amusement or something. And also on the calendar pages and the weather pages and the reference pages in the back, folks will see those words in little black tabs. So the calendar pages, the black tab says calendar, and the weather pages, the black tab says weather. And what we did is try to make the Old Farmers Almanac a little more navigable, a little more familiar, so that it might not seem like just some kind of outrageously weird collection of information to unfamiliar people. And I know, God bless them out there, there are a lot of folks who know exactly what the Old Farmers Almanac is. So, but anyway, that was my story in coming into the company.
This question here kind of ties into what you just said. So now that we got, a little bit of history behind us placing you with the Almanac, let's talk about the Almanac itself. Now, being that it is the oldest continuously published periodical in America, it would be hard to imagine someone not knowing what it is, or at least seen it on the shelf at your local supermarket, hardware store, bookstore, etc. For those who might not have ever picked one up and looked inside. Now, it's not just for farmers, right?
Correct. The Old Farmers Almanac is, at its heart, a calendar of the heavens. And that really speaks to the calendar pages, and those are virtually unchanged since the first edition, which you'll see, by the way, in the 2017 edition of the Old Farmers Almanac. You'll see some pages from the first edition of the publication. But it's a calendar of the heavens, which means that we predict the astronomical events for the whole calendar year, the rise and set of the sun and the length of day as a result, the rise and set of the moon, and a number of other things, including tides and moon phases and moon phase times, conjunctions and meteor showers and eclipses and bright stars and everything else that happens in the sky. And from that, from the idea of the calendar pages, flows all the rest of the content. So because it's a book about the calendar and days of the year and seasons, we have the weather, because the weather defines the seasons, and the calendar as well. They go hand in hand. And those define the gardening periods and the various steps and stages of gardening. And then you've got home remedies, because from the first, folks needed a few tips on how to fix an ailment or a wound, a quick fix, especially in those days when there weren't doctors. We've got anniversary stories, recipes for folks, because even from the first, when you were growing your food or keeping your animals and slaughtering them, you needed to know or wanted to know what to do with it, money and time-saving tips such as that. You've got trends in the front of the book, because it's also being all about the 1 year, the year on the cover. It's a time capsule of the year. So for some decades now, we've predicted the various trends and what folks are going to be wearing and eating and doing and thinking about, and your health and growing and farming. And, so all the categories flow from that, and even astrology, because astronomy, which is the true events in the sky, and astrology, which is based on the zodiac and placement in the sky, zodiac plays a big role because it just, again, is so much a part of the calendar year. So the Old Farmers Almanac is first and foremost a calendar of the heavens, and then you get your best fishing days, you get your planting by the moon, you get your frost dates, and, so very much of what is involved in the Almanac.
In the 2017 edition is special because it marks the 225th anniversary since the Almanac was founded in 1792. You might have mentioned that earlier. And that's pretty neat. You got a couple congratulatory letters within the first few pages from President Barack Obama, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. That's some pretty big names there who keep the Almanac handy. You know what I mean? When they want to know the weather forecast.
We were tickled, yes. I mean, that was delightful. We made a request, and, they came through with some delightful messages. And for folks who don't know, we also produce a Canadian edition of the Old Farmers Almanac, and that's why we presented a letter from Justin Trudeau in both editions, actually. The Canadian edition spans the coast to coast, up there, 3 coasts, actually, and has dedicated Canadian content in weather and astronomy. But we just try to provide information for all the readers, wherever they are.
And speaking of that weather forecasting, I have to ask about the legend, right, of this black box. I'm sure you're going to be able to explain this a little bit better than I can, but apparently this box holds all the secrets, the secret formula for this weather forecasting that you guys do.
Well, there's a funny video on our website, almanac.com, that you could look up, and you'll see me trying to get into the box. Yes, it's about a shoebox size. It's a metal box. It has a lock on it. And it's down the hall from here in Judd Hale's office, actually. That's where it resides, with a number of other artifacts from the history of the publication. And, it holds some notes, some cues, some tips from the earliest versions of the weather forecast and some of the ways it was done. But I must say that in the centuries that have passed, and certainly in recent decades, we've adapted to use all the latest scientific technology and data. The methodology is the same. The principles are the same. We use 3 scientific disciplines: solar science, which is the study of the activity on the sun; meteorology, which is the study of meteorology is the study of the atmosphere and jet stream and ocean temps and land temps and like that. Climatology is a study of prevailing conditions over time. So, it's the same principles, the same belief system, if you will, but all the latest information in state-of-the-art technology.
Now, the Almanac does have a pretty impressive weather forecasting accuracy, right? I mean, how do you explain that?
Well, traditionally, our weather forecasts are 80% accurate. We don't believe anybody can be 100% accurate all the time, and especially, of course, long range. If you want to ask what the weather's going to be in 10 minutes, I could maybe be 100% accurate, or anybody could. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so last year we were correct about 83% of the time in terms of precipitation departure, and same with temperature as it happens. And of course, I should point out that that's across the country in 18 regions of the U.S. So at any given time, we may have been quite a bit more accurate than that, or maybe even quite a bit less accurate than a traditional 80% accuracy rate. But we will predict the deviation from the norm in temp and precipitation. So it's not exactly what the temperature is going to be. It's the monthly average in temperature and precipitation that's given for every region for every day, and then there are some details for every period of days throughout the month. So it's a deviation from the norm, and the norms are based on 30-year averages that not just the Old Farmers Almanac, but every meteorological source in the hemisphere uses, actually. So it's agreement among the weather people everywhere, and this has been in place since the early 20th century, I understand. So, that's how we do it. We have a meteorologist who consults for us and presents the weather forecast to us once a year, and we clean them up, copy edit it, lay them out, make them fit, and we don't change a thing, and we kind of just watch and see what's happening as we go throughout the seasons and into the new year. So, sometimes our forecasts are better than others. We did not predict all of the heavy rainfall and snow, for example, on the West Coast, California, in recent months, because we just didn't expect that to happen. We're happy that it did. In many ways that is a benefit to all of us because of the vast vegetable and fruit harvest that will go on there.
Yeah.
May have created some problems, of course, in its abundance, that is the rain, floods, and like that. But anyway, yeah, we'll wait and see. We haven't really looked at the whole year to see what we're doing. That was one very obvious miss, if you will. But at the end of the summer, our meteorologists will do all the calculations and let us know what the final numbers are.
83% is pretty good anyway. I mean, you're allowed to miss a little bit, I think. Another neat little bit of history about the almanac itself is that traditional hole punch in the upper left-hand corner. Now, that's not a defect if anyone looks at the book.
Oh, heavens, no.
That's meant to be.
No, the earliest editions of the Almanac really resembled this one only in the internal contents, the calendar pages, and in the frontispiece, which is, the earliest almanacs resembled this one in the calendar page and the nature of the content, and also the frontispiece page. This is actually the page one of the book. That is virtually unchanged as well. But the hole in the corner did not exist, and because the earliest editions were about 46 pages, and folks would take a nail and make a hole in the corner themselves so they could put a string through it and hang it in the kitchen or the barn or the shed or even the outhouse. And, as time went on and the industrial age was upon us, the publishers of the Old Farmers Almanac were able to have holes drilled in, and we still do. My understanding is they can drill 12 or 15 copies at a time, and you can imagine when we're printing 3 million copies of the Almanac, and almost all of those get a hold. Hardcovers do not. But that takes some time, but it's just a part of the process we've come to accept. I could point out, too, that in the late 1990s we did a reader survey and asked folks in the survey, what do you think about the hole? It's costing us $46,000 plus a few bucks to make this hole. We're thinking of using that money for other things. And people said in a landslide response, no, don't do that. Do not stop using the hole. Please keep the hole in. We love the hole. So the hole is there to stay.
And you mentioned
and that's the whole.
Yeah, and that's the whole story, right? No pun intended.
Yes, you got it.
I got that. Now you did say outhouse, and that caught my attention. I was reading, just before we move on here, people would use these almanacs and they would put them in their outhouses and they would hang them on that nail in the outhouse and they would use it as toilet paper after they read it. So the almanac was basically multi-purpose back then.
Well, you could say that, but I think the important thing that you pointed out was after they read it.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure. I wanted people to know they just didn't buy that to use it as toilet paper. Absolutely. After they read the pages, they would use it as, like I said, multi-purpose.
It's possible. I don't have any witnesses, but that's how
I'm going to go with what you said. Pretty sure they read it first. But on a more serious note, for a publication to have survived and thrived for 225 years is amazing. I mean, why do you think the Old Farmers Almanac has withstood the test of time and continues to do so well year after year?
Well, I think the key to its success really resides with the mission set forth by Robert B. Thomas from the first, and that was to be useful with a pleasant degree of humor. It's a very simple goal, a simple idea, but I must admit, sitting here in the editor's chair, it's not always simple to carry forth. To be useful, yes, it's a calendar of the heavens, a calendar of something for every single day. With a pleasant degree of humor, and that sometimes can be the hard part, but, we've got a fun group of people here, and we come up with some wacky stories like how to woo on the web or, how to train your dog to wash your car and do other things, as well as provide some really serious tips like how to dry farm and great ways to grow your tomatoes and bring the pollinating insects into your yard and things. So I think it really goes to, and we salute Robert B. Thomas every day for the idea of being useful with a pleasant degree of humor, and we live to maintain that.
Now, being that the Almanac is such an old school publication, has it been an easy transition for the company as we move into a more digital means of getting information? I mean, are you receiving the success as far as social media and websites and outlets such as that?
Oh, absolutely. That's an excellent question. Yes. I mean, the Old Farmers Almanac is old but not old-fashioned. We've been on the web with the website almanac.com since 1995. We produce ebook editions of the Old Farmers Almanac for virtually any device that you can name. So that's available through wherever you buy your ebooks or on almanac.com. We're very active in social media. On Facebook, we've got almost 1,500,000 folks that are friends.
Shabby.
I invite your listeners to join us and bring us to that 1.5 million number. It's not far away. Our website, almanac.com, is extremely active. In fact, just this morning before you called, I was answering questions from readers from around the country about different planting challenges. We get questions every single day. We are on Pinterest and Twitter and, very active with social media and, we produce 8 or 10 calendars. There's so many. It's always changing. Country and weather watchers and engagement and recipe and let's see what else we're going to. A gardening guide that just came out. Folks can look for this, by the way. It's got a bright orange, neon orange titled Garden Guide and some fabulous mouth-watering vegetables on the cover. Grow like a pro with the Old Farmers Almanac Garden Guide. We produce an Old Farmers Almanac for kids. We've been doing that now for 14 years. It's an undated, that is, it will never run out of cycle. Mm-hmm. Undated, full-color, no advertisement publication, the Old Farmers Almanac for kids. It's available wherever books and magazines are sold, or also on almanac.com. The 7th edition will be out this summer with the 2018 Old Farmers Almanac. We do a cookbook. We just produced last season the Old Farmers Almanac Reader's Best Recipes from readers from around the country and Canada with their story behind the recipe, because let's face it, whenever you get together with some friends over food, the story always is, where did you get this recipe? And, can I have it? So that was the premise of the book. We are busy, busy, busy. Friends have told me over the years, oh, you produce one book a year. How easy is that? And I say, oh, no. There's a whole lot of books and calendars and different things going on.
So outside of your work with the Almanac, just you personally, I mean, how do you enjoy your free time? I mean, what do you like to do just to get away from it all and just clear your head?
Well, I do love to garden because it's an experiment every year. I have 2 community gardens. I'm in 2 different communities. So I have a bed in the ground and I have a raised bed. I love to bike ride. I love to cook. I like to read. like to get into the city once in a while and just wander around with looking up into buildings and different things. Go to the beach. I mean, I like to get out and about.
So before we wrap this up, I always give my guest the opportunity to sort of wrap up the show, do my work for me. Is there anything you would like to mention to all the listeners out there who's tuned in right now? A final word maybe to all the fans and readers of the Old Farmers Almanac?
Well, a couple of things. I would like to invite you to come to almanac.com and scroll down and click on the webcam, and you can see the results of the snowstorm, the blizzard we just endured here in Dublin, New Hampshire, and you can see our barn red building, see us coming and going all day long. And I just want everybody to keep this in mind and don't take it the wrong way. But no matter what the weather is, the only perfect climate is in bed, because that's where everybody is most comfortable.
No truer words have ever been spoken. Well, Janice, thank you once again for taking a few minutes out of your day to join me on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, it's just been great fun, and love to talk to you anytime you want to give us a shout.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.